Hello and welcome to Upload, the show where we take what's happening in the world and upload it to your mind. On the panel is Bobby Del Rio, Mr. Todd Van Allen.
I kind of look like Sam Elliott.
No, you don't.
Okay.
Not even close. And last but not least, Lewis Taylor.
Is everyone else bored with this?
No, not yet.
Okay.
We get Andrew Moody back.
Here's
We're
fun.
upload
Whoa.
you.
Oh, yeah.
You.
And my name is Andrew Moody. I keep forgetting. Anyway, so the first thing we're going to talk about is something that actually just broke on the weekend, and we're just going to touch upon it just to sort of, just kind of lightly go over it because we don't have all the information, but apparently Dan Lyon, who works at Telefilm, and Bobby, you can talk to us more about what his job is. But Dan Lyon, his job is in peril because of some sexual possible accusations of sexual impropriety, and also he's also being blamed for Telefilm being racist. Now, Bobby, could you tell us a bit more about Dan Lyon's job at Telefilm?
Yeah, it's funny because I think that's sort of the question, right? It's that I don't know if anyone really knows what he does or how Telefilm works, and there's a lot of questions. They're not very transparent. We do know that Dan Lyon has a lot of power, and so now there are all these questions about, is Dan Lyon a racist? And so there was a writer of color who I believe has been funded by Telefilm twice, and actually by Dan Lyon twice, but has just been turned down for his newest project. But then he called out Dan Lyon for being racially insensitive, basically calling him a racist. And then the community is basically agreeing. And then when that came out, Melissa D'Agostino, who's like an Italian filmmaker, basically said, and there's like a 7-minute interview that she did on a documentary called After Me Too, I believe, where she goes into detail about how Dan Lyon made her feel very uncomfortable and made a sexually suggestive comment, and had a meeting, and then all these other women now are saying that basically he's done the exact same thing to them, and no one really knows what Telefilm's going to do about it. Like, that's kind of where we're at. That's basically the story. It's evolving every hour.
Now, just to jump in really quickly before we go on, Dan Lyon, according to the internet, is Telefilm Canada's regional feature film executive. So he's in charge of, for Ontario and Nunavut, for being a film executive, but he doesn't actually read scripts and judge them and say, you get money and you don't. The structure of Telefilm is they have people doing coverage, what's called coverage, which means they hand the script off to somebody in the industry who's a writer or a director who makes a judgment, and they do a report and they hand that to Dan Lyon, and then he makes his decisions.
Well, and you've done that job, right?
Yeah, I've been a reader for Telefilm, and I'll tell you about that in a second. Todd, what's your take on the situation?
Fuck you too, Jesus.
I know. I won't talk about it now, Bobby.
Wow.
I guess my take is this a good time or a bad time for me to submit a script?
What? You joke, but dude, like, I didn't even tell you guys this. I emailed Dan, because I'm working on a project right now. I emailed Dan Lyon like Friday afternoon and Monday just to say, hey, Dan, just checking in with you about this project I was talking about 2 months ago. Wanted to get a coffee or just do a Zoom call. Sorry, because you can't get coffee now. Because I just wanted him to update him. And I had no idea about this stuff. So when Bobby told me, I'm like, well, there goes months. I'm not.
Well, it's funny. I had emailed him Friday too about a play that he attended called Professionally Ethnic. It's funny because here's the thing about Dan Lyon is that he's been a friend of mine really for 10 years. And I worked with him at Real World, where Telefilm was a sponsor, and he hosted and moderated panels on how to help filmmakers of color work with Telefilm for 5 years, right?
Yeah.
So when I hear that he's a racist, I was like, well, that's not consistent with my experience. And like, I don't, I can't speak, maybe he's got a KKK robe in his basement, although I think he's Jewish, so it would really surprise me, if that were the case. But I don't know. But I think when you say he doesn't know anything about race, it's just not true. I just worked with him.
Yeah.
I would agree with my personal experience as well. I've had many meetings with him, and I have a pretty strong racial radar, racist radar. And I've
And yet
never,
I'm still here.
and yet Todd's still here.
Mm.
And again, like, I've had nothing but incredibly respectful exchanges with him. Like, full disclosure, yeah, Bobby and I have had business relationships with Dan Line for years, not just like months, but years. Anyway, sorry, Louis.
I don't even think it's a secret. I mean, he's been all over the industry. It's funny because I've had lots and lots of people privately tell me, thank you for defending Dan, because I feel the same way. And this is like people of color, this is white people, this is women, this is all ages. But at the same time, and look, it's an interesting conversation because there's a lot of women and people of color who say they feel that he's been very racially insensitive, he's made sexually suggestive comments. And look, I can't defend that sort of aspect of his personality. I haven't experienced that, but that doesn't mean that he hasn't done it. So this is the debate, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, my take on this, because I really don't have any kind of relationship with Dan. I've just seen him at some events and talked to him a few times. And my take on him is that he is a fish, largely a fish out of water trying to air swim. And that's a position I think most of us have been in, where we're in a new situation that we're not, we haven't had enough cultural experience to be comfortable in that situation, but you're making the attempt. And anyone that knows me knows how many times I've put my foot in my mouth. I'm willing to a certain degree give him a pass, not that my opinion matters for anything, but man, so many of us say so many inappropriate things because in that moment we're a complete moron. Do we learn from it is the question for me.
10 to 15 women. So look, Melissa very
That's a lot.
bravely,
That's
she's
a lot.
on video. Apparently she was in this documentary last year and didn't call them out by name, and then just called them out by name like yesterday morning. And now 10 to 15 other women are basically saying, that's happened to me too. That's happened to me too. Women have had this sort of secret exchange between each other that it's like, if you want Dan Line to fund your project, make sure you show cleavage.
Wow.
And there's
Wow.
10 to 15 stories from different women who don't know each other, and I'm hearing that privately, and I'm hearing that. So, look, which is all news to me, and it's shocking, but I can't, even though obviously that's not my experience, I can't defend that.
I agree. Like, I think, I've, over the past few years, I've learned that, some people that I've held a great respect for have done completely despicable things and have rightly deserved to be punished for it. So, and this is, it's the cognitive dissonance of our age, where it's hard to understand, but there can be people who, like, I have had a great experience with Dan Line. He's always been respectful to me. I've always felt very strongly that he supported people of color. And as a matter of fact, if he didn't, I would have gone off. I don't keep quiet about that shit. So if I ever felt for a moment that he was a racist person, I would have actually said it very out loud and plainly. So even though I've never had any bad experience with him, that doesn't mean that he hasn't committed acts that are despicable, that I think are wrong and that he should be punished for. I just don't know much information about it, and I would like to get more. I think everybody, we're in that stage now, whenever this process happens, where you're like, okay, we want to believe the women, absolutely, we just need some more information so that we can just really get a better understanding of exactly what was said and when and how, but,
First of all, Andrew, I love it when you get sassy. I love that. Going back to my original question, knowing that we require cleavage, is this enough if I'm going into the pitch meeting?
Tighten it up, baby.
You're going to get in trouble. You just got canceled, Todd. Todd,
You're going to get us canceled.
you're canceled, bish.
Sassy.
We'll just replace you with a woman of color. We'll be fine.
Well, okay, that's easy.
Okay.
Here's the thing. As this is all going through, this sounds very much kind of echoey of Roger Ailes, of like person at the top, going through, doing horrible, horrible things to let things through. But that's on the face of it. And I'm with you, Andrew. Like, if these allegations are true, then obviously there needs to be an investigation, but more information needs to happen. And if there are more women out there, they should feel free to come out without any sort of sense of of wrong, just so we can get to the bottom of this. Because I don't know if you guys saw Bombshell, that movie that documented the whole Roger Ailes thing. I needed 5 showers afterwards. It was god awful. And we
I don't think anyone's accusing him of being that level of lecture.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if that's I don't know if that's true, right? But right now no one has blatantly said it, but there's been so many people hinting that way.
You know what? Okay. Here's the thing about Dan Lyon. He's got some company, because also, guess who else is getting canceled, Bish? The founder of our country, Mr. John A. McDonald.
Segway Monster!
There you go. Bobby, how was that? Was that good?
I mean,
I know, right?
Saw it coming.
So, I mean, and I swear to God, I am going to get canceled with what I'm about to say, because I understand totally tearing down statues of racist figures who are members of the Confederacy, or, you know, British slavers who did nothing but enslave black people to get themselves rich. I get that. However, there is a thread on that sweater that you don't want to pull too far. I love having a statue of Martin Luther King, but there are things about his character that are not great. And
didn't he have affairs and stuff like that?
It's none of your business.
Well, the FBI has claimed that they have tapes of him basically fucking interns, and they might actually have.
Fucking who?
Martin Luther King.
Was fucking who?
Interns, white interns.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, and I'm not saying, hey, look, I'm so going to get canceled. I'm not saying don't tear down statues of, like...
Welcome to our last episode.
Welcome to, exactly. If you want to tear down statues of John A. McDonald, that's fine, I guess. But what I would love to see in a perfect world, because I love history and I'm a history geek, I'm like, put up more statues, but of indigenous peoples. And then have information on those statues about the good and the bad of both those people, because there's going to be good and bad about everybody, because that's the cognitive dissonance that we're struggling with in our time.
There's only so far I go with that. And this crosses all race lines for me. I'm not a big fan of Shaka Zulu. Right? I am not a big fan of the Egyptian pharaohs. I am not a big fan of people building statues to conquerors, considering what the result of conquest is, which is slaughter and mayhem. And I personally don't have a lot of skin in the game of taking down that statue, but I'm sure as hell going to support Native people going, you know, hey, this dude is an invader that justified the genocide of my people. Now, you do shit like that, right? And I've got an issue with you. If, on the other hand, you're looking at people like Martin Luther King, I also agree you should be called out. Like in all his speeches where he's saying, you know, we are a man, right? Sorry, let me go back on this a bit. My judgment on historical figures is, could they adapt to the present moment and the present dialogue, right? I do not see George Washington ever wanting to be in the same room with someone black as an equal. I do not see Sir John A. McDonald gifting up. I can see Martin Luther King being called on not being a feminist, not being a strong supporter of black women. I can see him going, ooh, I better adjust my game. Malcolm X, I'm not so sure about, but I think near the end of his life, he could. Now, can you bring up those points in discussions? Well, yeah, this guy's a hero, but look at this, right? But as far as I'm concerned, when you start bringing in conquerors who are essentially murderers and land thieves, right, and justifying their statues I think if I'm going to accept that statue still being in a public space, then you should also be willing to accept my alternative point of view on that person.
Okay, look, here's what I'll say on this, okay? I think we can all agree that there shouldn't be a Hitler statue in Queen's Park, okay?
Right.
But I think there's levels to this shit, you know what I mean? It's like, where's the line, right? It's like, surely we can agree that Martin Luther King, you know, is one of the greatest activists for civil rights in the history of civilization. But does this mean that he's a perfect human? No, right? So, right, could you say, well, look at the things that he did against women and, you know, okay, so that, are we now invalidating the significant progress that he helped generate? And then I say, well, where is the line, right? It's like, there's so many issues in our society. There's so many things that are wrong. And even people like that, we're all good human beings, except for Luke, right? But
you are so full of shit.
You know, we don't agree. We don't agree. We have different points of view. We're trying to do the right thing, but who's deciding what the right thing is? What is the line?
Here's the thing. Like, I know people should not listen to Bill Cosby's work anymore. That's just a fact. Like, that's just what's happened. And I agree with it. I think, however, in 100 years, 200 years, if the human race is still around, what happened to him will have transformed in the same way that, you know, the way we look at Shakespeare, the way we look at Euripides. Like, I think the current, you know, all the fuss around Socrates or whatever will have gone through through time, so that people won't care 200 years from now about that. They'll just simply be looking at his work. And here's the thing. I don't want to know what Shakespeare actually thought about black people. I just don't. I don't want to hear about it. There's certain works of his that I love, and I will hold them close to my heart. I don't want to hear what Jimmy Stewart thinks about black people. I love It's a Wonderful Life. I just want to watch the fucking movie. Please, watch it.
No, I can't.
I just want to watch the movie.
You can watch anything you want to watch, but don't tell me that I'm not supposed to. Oh, shush on that. Shush. That's bullshit.
No, you can say whatever you want about Jimmy Stewart.
No, I'm saying that should be part of the dialogue.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah,
don't shut out the dialogue. That's all I'm saying.
Here's the thing. It's just like, but don't tell me I can't watch it. Don't tell me, how dare you watch It's a Wonderful Life, because don't you know Jimmy Stewart's racist? That's
hold on. My answer
we're
is...
talking about cancel. We're talking about cancel culture, right? And I guess for me, it's a very simple question. Okay, who gets to decide who gets canceled?
Yeah. Well,
we all know who decides. It's who wins in the end and writes the history of that moment. I mean, who knows who's going to win this shit?
And speaking of the history of that moment, like, there's been a large rally for Elijah McClain. For those of you,
yeah. Can I say one thing before we move on?
Oh, sure.
There's one really, really interesting point that came up with this YouTube video on the statue of Robert E. Lee, right, being taken down, and the discussion around the actual memorial, the writing of the memorial to the Robert E. Lee mansion. And this is what it says before all the kerfuffle about Robert E. Lee. Right. The Robert E. Lee Memorial honors Lee's military and public leadership in pre- and post-Civil War America. Congress designated the memorial to recognize that, quote, the desire and hope of Robert E. Lee for peace and unity within our nation has come to pass, end quote. From the portico, you can contemplate our nation's fate as you gaze across the river that once divided us. Now, okay, this is the next quote after everyone got upset, right? Arlington House is the nation's memorial to Robert E. Lee. It honors him for specific reasons, including his role in promoting peace and reunion after the Civil War. In a larger sense, it exists as a place of study and contemplation of the meaning of some of the most difficult aspects of American history: military service, sacrifice, citizenship, duty, loyalty, slavery, and freedom. So tell me there's not going to be more discussion about that.
Uh-huh.
Oh God.
Just one quick thing, Andrew, just before we go, because my headphones kicked out there, so I didn't hear a lot of the conversation. But thankfully, it was when Lewis was talking, so that's cool. Here's one thing that I think about statues. If we take them down, the birds will have less places to shit. And that's really the only thing that statues bring to the table.
Good
Monuments, the argument of how will my kids learn about this? Maybe open a fucking book, you monster. And so, like, if you go through Germany, there are no statues of Hitler commemorating the greatness of our difficult time.
Yeah.
Germany is very quick to go, that guy? Yeah, he was fucked. But they have the right monuments in place to actually educate and teach people about the atrocities that occurred. And when you look at the actual statues of like the hollowed metal ones that we'll put up as big fuck yous to the black community that are now being torn down, those ones, which weren't even erected at a time of commemoration, they were a know your place people erection. Yeah. And it was a horrible time, and I don't think we need them, to be quite honest. That's just.
Very quickly. I was just going to add, you guys check out on YouTube John Schneider from the Dukes of Hazzard. Remember that actor?
What? Okay, I am listening.
Yeah. John Schneider, because actually I was going to suggest this to you for the I Hate White People segment, just so you know. John Schneider had a question that he put out to the internet just recently on YouTube, because he has a question about, the Confederate flag, and he has these questions about, whether it should be thrown out. So just watch a video, look up for John Schneider, difficult question, because he puts forward the question, and this is absolutely serious, and he puts forward this question for people to answer on his YouTube video comments. Why, if the Confederacy was so evil, did black free men fight for the Confederacy?
Oh my God.
Why did that happen? Check it out. We're not going to talk about it. Okay, moving on. Just check it out. And then
I can't believe Tom Wopat was the smarter of those two guys.
Yeah.
I can't
talk about guys who are canceled. Oh my God.
Man.
So, so this is on the topics for next week?
Yeah, we'll come back to that next week. How about that? Just because you've got to take a look. Like. You got to take a look, and that might be check them out for the I Hate White People, Todd. I'm just saying.
Link us.
So marathon, I just discovered it. Marathon Elijah McClain protest in Aurora runs the gamut from comedy to chaos. So basically, there was this peaceful protest for poor Elijah McClain. Sorry, for those of you who don't know, he was a young black man who had anxiety issues, and he was walking to the store, and on his way back from the store, somebody commented that there was a suspicious black youth, and on video you can see the police beating the crap out of him. He's just saying simply, don't touch me, don't come near me, because he's got anxiety issues. And so there was a protest. Elijah McClain was a violinist, so a number of violinists played, and and it's on YouTube. There's a beautiful, I get sad when I talk about it. There's a beautiful concert that's done by these violinists to celebrate his life. But how do we respond to the way in which the police reacted to it, which was by, firing, wearing riot gear and wielding shields and clubs on them?
That was it. That was an interesting story, because it says something about the weirdness of human power games, right? Because the protest was moved. The police shut it down. I'm not sure if they used pepper spray or rubber bullets at that point. I don't know. I don't. But then it moved to a parking lot, and then the police came again, and there was this one black violinist who started playing this song, and as the police were doing whatever, then all of a sudden they stopped, which is like which raises all kinds of questions about power and authority and all the rest of it. Like, did they finally realize that what they were doing was just shit ton stupid?
It's like that opera music scene in The Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, you lost. I think you lost all of us.
Yeah,
Did he lose all of us?
To this day, I have no idea what that fancy lady was singing about.
Right.
One moment, we all felt free.
Right.
There we
Okay.
This whole story is so tragic because I mean he's just such a like young, shy kid. He looks like a kid, just and these cops are like brutalizing this.
One thing with like this was a kid that played violin on his lunch hour for cats
Cats.
in an animal shelter.
Mhm.
Like if I had to like pick out the least violent, aggressive looking human being in a lineup, it's him, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess for me, as a person of color but who's not black, who has very different experiences, it's shocking to me, right? Because you like, how can anyone of any race look at a kid like that and see a criminal?
Mhm.
It boggles the mind.
This is
know a
why
lot of
this
guys.
is why the protests are important, because he has become the poster child of what the fear is in the black. I'm speaking as the middle-aged white man here, but I think I know what the black community is feeling.
Here
but
we
Go,
go.
Todd. You go, Todd. Go.
From the outside looking in, if you were looking for the poster person to go, what is everyone complaining about, right? It is this. A child that had his whole life ahead of him, who was doing charity work, who had anxiety issues and would not harm a fly, and is now dead as a result of police brutality. If you're looking for someone in the black community to go, that's why we're afraid to leave our house. That's why I'm protesting right now. And that is why I'm going to line up for hours as they gerrymander all of the voting zones so I can get these motherfuckers out of office. That's why.
Yeah,
Now,
how is Candace Owens going to disparage him?
Mhm.
That seems
Oh,
to
they'll
be
find a
the
way.
thing, you know?
One of the things this brings up for me, though, especially after seeing that the cops that killed him and some of their cronies were fired when they reenacted the choking to death of Elijah, it reminded me of all of those psychotic, hardcore, super butch guys that I grew up with. Right, and that are a part of, and I'm not just diminishing the racial aspect of this, but you will find these guys everywhere in the world, and the success of your society, one aspect of it is how do you control these guys who have this need to maim, to slaughter, to brutalize. I mean, these guys are everywhere. And it's, until you deal with that, like you could see them, and I've had personal experiences with this being considered weak, physically weak.
Mhm.
Just how some guys, that was just like catnip to them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And what really tears me up about this is I think so many, and I think it's why it's such a big story, so many people who have gone through, especially men, gone through that brutal experience of being beaten when there's nothing you can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think so many people are relating to that, to just, God damn it.
I agree. I think that because over the years I've done so much research on this topic, and I've talked with Crown attorneys and with defense attorneys, and now doing this show, I've been doing a lot of research on YouTube about people getting arrested, and so now YouTube is just feeding me all kinds of people getting arrested. And I've got this, actually there's a couple of like libertarian channels where you have these white men, and God bless them, these white libertarian men who are sitting in their cars. They've been pulled over for no reason, and they know their rights. They know that they can quote the Constitution and every single aspect of it, and they'll sit there in their cars, and the police come up to them and they'll say, "Do you have just cause? Am I under arrest? Am I under arrest? I'm not under arrest. I don't have to answer your question." And they just lay into it. And the cop will say, "You have to answer my question." And the libertarian is like, 5.57 of the state's rights. A police officer may not, blah, blah, blah. And they've got it memorized. And I'm like, I want to be that guy. I want to be that. I want to know that feeling. That sort of
You
that.
can't because you're black.
entitlement.
You can't.
Yeah.
Allow me.
Yeah.
He can, because actually there was a similar video that I saw, and I wish I could cite it right now, but it was a black man being approached by 4 police officers in a parking lot. And
Right.
I think it was a noted public space, and he kept telling these 4 policemen it was a public space, and he talked to the main supervisor, and meanwhile drew his attention to this other officer who had his hand on his gun.
Right.
And so by doing exactly what Andrew described there, citing rote law in front of these officers and saying, these are I want your badge numbers right now because that is my right to do so, by this point of law. He was able to do it, and then they finally dispersed. They just got sick of it. But like, there's this moment of tension the entire time because this one fucking cop has his hand on his gun.
Yeah.
And he talked his way out of it, citing the law in front of officers.
And I bet his tone was different. I bet his tone was real different.
Oh yeah. If you know the law, then you're just very there's a certain certainty that you get. There's a
No. What I'm talking about though, and this has happened to me, and I think I've talked about this before, where on set a few times, I've had older crew members around my age approach me and all of a sudden talk about war stories, like white dudes talk about war stories with cops and how they've gotten this cop's face, and they said, "Fuck you, buddy. Yeah, you can't do that to me." All this shit, and I'm jealous. There's not a chance I could do that. And I bet any money that the guys that you're talking about that know the Constitution, their tone would have been very different from my brother surrounded by those 4 cops, one of them with a hand on the gun.
Oh, there's a great video of a black woman getting stopped in Florida. It's a great video. A couple of cops walk up to her, and they're like, can I see your license and registration? And she's like, "Sure, why?" And they're like, because you're, I can't remember what it is. You should watch it. And then basically he's like, so yeah, what do you do? And she says, "I'm the state attorney."
Right.
Here's your identification back, ma'am. So sorry.
Right.
Have a nice day. And then they just peel off.
Backing away with a hand over the badge number.
Exactly.
Just
And I'm just like, "You go, sister. Oh, you go."
The reality, it wouldn't have mattered if George Floyd knew all of his rights, and the reality is he probably did. What's funny is that the people who are most targeted by the police, in my experience, they know the rules and the laws more than anyone because it affects them the most. But I just think, quite frankly, if you're black, it doesn't matter because they don't care.
And also too, some of those police officers not only do not care, but a certain North Carolina police officer decided to offer a racist rant, caught on tape, saying, "I can't wait for a race war." Who submitted that one?
Monster!
There's
Go.
Right, man.
Okay.
Great job.
What? Where? What?
Play to the strengths.
There's a video
Oh,
of these cops, and I forget where they were. Was it North Carolina? I think it was North Carolina. 4 cops who had been on the force for years, ranting about the coming race war, how they were they're sick of black people. Let's just wipe them all out. Right, we're going to set them back generations. So just basically believing there will be a race war, fully believing that they could stick whatever appendage of their body they want to into someone's mouth, and it would be validated and it would be fine because we're in a race war.
Well,
Does that make any sense?
Gun sales are, and I sent this article in the group, but gun sales are an all-time high in the United States, which, think how many gun crimes are there? Guns. They're like in the history of gun sales is the highest ever. 40% of whom are first-time gun owners. So I just think people are arming up, and it's like I don't know if it's like for the race war, but that's exactly what it is, right? It's like you have people just waiting for the other side to give them a reason. Right now, you have all these videos of white people pulling guns on black people, right? Or just they're walking around with their automatic weapons, and it's like people are daring you to try. It's like they're waiting for an excuse.
I think it's also that they're extremely, like, the level of fear and the defense of space, the defense of my place in society. I should not be feeling this fear. The cops have failed because black people are no longer fearing me in the way that they should.
Right. But also look at all these people that are drawing guns right now. Like there's that wonderful one of like the woman who, it's one of the most frightening videos I've seen in quite a while, and every day is just another shit show after another. But it's from the point of view of the woman that is having the gun aimed at her, and the barrel is here, and it's frightening. And it isn't until you see this armed Karen realize, oh fuck, I'm being filmed. And you can literally see that moment. It's like when they're freeze framing Ralph Wiggum's heart being torn in two. It's that same moment where she just goes, oh fuck, I think I'm done, right? And that couple that we talked about last week that came out with the AR-15, the raisins stay in the potato salad. And his life having been ruined right now. Well, it should be, because you are an armed asshole. I think what we're seeing is a wonderful confluence of people being terrified of being left out in terms of resources because of COVID. We're seeing racial tensions being upheld. By the way, climate change not going away. So resources are going to dwindle, right? Mm-hmm. So we're in a great fucking spot. So yeah, buy up a gun. But what you're seeing is like they're trying to pivot on these moments of strength, knowing that in their heart, they're the weakest people. And that's what's infuriating about this.
I totally agree. I would add, however, that, America's been on the verge of a race war since the Civil War.
It's been in a race war.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the South never stopped the race war.
The North wasn't really all that inclined for peace either.
And ultimately, too, I think that it's going to kind of become like the situation between like Northern Ireland and the UK, or places where, or even Macedonia and Greece, where there's will always be a tension. It'll always be there. They may find some way to work out economic agreements, but there will always be a memory of history. There'll always be people who weren't even alive in the 1800s, but they have been told by their mother that their grandfather did the fucking with the grandfather, and then their family has unjustly been whatever by the North. That is always going to exist. I think that it's different now than the 1960s. It's different now than when SNCC appeared and when the Black Panthers appeared, because I think back then people truly believed, oh my God, this is actually the race war. Like, oh, right. Black people are actually taking arms. Oh, so that means there's a two-sided war. Oh, because we were just going to shoot the black people. That's
well, if you look at the history of race rights in states up until very recently, and that's post 60s, most of the race riots in America were white-led. White against black. But at the same time, there was just recently, July 4th, black militiamen marched on Georgia to Stonewall Park.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. Like hundreds of them just saying, Ku Klux Klan, where you at?
Yeah.
I mean, you got some brothers that ain't playing soft right now.
No.
Now, here's the thing.
It's pretty awesome to watch.
I'm totally against violence. I'm totally against guns. I want to make this very clear before I'm about to say what I'm about to say.
Here we go.
But I know it.
I think we flipping need somebody, thank you, just to say from the other side, hey, you can't intimidate us. Like, I know the whole thing about the Ku Klux Klan and the white hood and the burning crosses is about intimidation. But if there's anything they should have learned by now, it's people of color in America, of all colors, they're not intimidated. Like, there are wonderful people like the Martin Luther Kings who are like, look, you can commit violence against me, but actually all I have is love for this country and a desire to see peaceful resolution. Or you have Malcolm X's of the country who are like, I'm not scared and I'm armed, you know?
Right. Yeah.
There was a great book called Negroes with Guns that the Black Panthers loved. And
By the way,
I think,
one of my favorite death metal bands.
That would be a great band.
and I think that brother fled to Cuba.
I think the band Living
So-
Color, that was their original name.
Yeah, dude, I
So
love Living
this
Color.
guy was not, he was not playing around. And he comes from a tradition that's been forgotten of Black people arming themselves against white aggression. Most of them either dead or leaving the country. So it's, man, there's, you know what, that's all I got.
I still think it's wrong to bear arms. I still think it's wrong. Just guns are wrong. And I know that there are people out there who are pro-gun or like, Andrew, it's not the guns that kill people, it's the bow, whatever. It's like, okay, fine.
Which is which is the best reason not to have guns. Yes, people kill people.
Yes.
Don't give people guns.
Why do
But-
you gotta
Do a
take our
fucking
guns?
seagull.
Because you're stupid. That's
know.
why.
Not omit
But
the
so-
role that Trump plays in this, right? I mean, Trump is fanning the flames of this race war. Like,
Yeah,
he's a-
but it's been before Trump. And as a matter of fact, the woman who, the white couple that pulled a gun on the black family, they're being charged.
Yeah.
They're
Right.
finally being charged.
Yeah.
And a part of me is like, yeah, they should be charged, but also maybe Americans should look into this thing of gun culture, and that, because to a certain degree, like what freaked me out about the woman taking the video, I would have been running. I would have been like,
Yeah.
there would have been a video of me
Yeah.
going like
Yeah.
further
Yeah.
and further away. But this
But
woman doing the video was like, oh, you're going to shoot me? Are you going to shoot me? And I think that's just because in American culture, guns are just so prevalent. In their movies are prevalent, in their TV shows. It's just.
With
it's not-
that said, though, I don't think we can underestimate Trump's role in this, right? I mean, if you look at the alt-right, if you look at, like, he's galvanizing and supporting KKK members, neo-Nazis. He's like, they're committing crimes, and he's like, oh, it's fine. There's good people there too. Like, you see more of these guys coming out in public, organizing, marching. And, you know, I just watched this documentary on Netflix called like Age of Rage or something about the alt-right, and he's galvanizing that movement. It's like people are being recruited to that movement, and he's a big part of it.
But on the other side of it, the base that he's speaking to is ostracizing more and more people that might have voted for him the first time. More and more people who may not feel threatened, but are like, oh my God, right? I don't think there's a huge shift in those numbers, I think right now you're stripping it down. He's stripping down his base to a core membership, and shedding all of those peripheral members, which is actually even more frightening. Actually,
I think that he's doubling down on the Confederacy flag-loving, racist, sexist people. He's really, I think he feels like that's the way he's going to win the election. And if I were him, that's the strategy I'd use. If I was Trump, I'd be
The
like,
whole thing, I don't know if I've ever brought this up before. There are moments where I feel slightly sorry for Donald Trump. And here is why. He fancies himself an elite. He fancies himself one of the 1%. He fancies himself being one of the aristocrats in society. And he has failed at every step in the way to make this happen for him. And he wants to be among the top of the top in New York City or wherever he goes. And he is roundly mocked and ridiculed by his supposed peers and compatriots. So now imagine him knowing that that's the table he can't sit at, and the only people that actually like him are goobers in red hats who won't wear masks. Imagine that. Imagine him going, the only place I'm ever going to find love from people is to go and sit in someone's double wide and have a Bud Light.
Oh, and he despises those people. I'm
I know,
sure on
I
a
know.
fundamental level.
But at the same time, he's got some of the richest people in the world
Of course.
in his back
Of
pocket.
course.
So
But you
in
know
the
what?
back pocket. But
The
there's,
New
but
York
there's no
elites,
like.
though,
they don't
nice.
like him, no. They don't
No,
respect
no one likes him. I would like to kind of close the loop on the three things happening badly at once. I'm going to quote Greg Proops on this one. Someone asked him how he was doing, and he said, "This is a wonderful time if you want to live in 1919, 1932, and 1965 all at the same time."
That's brilliant.
Well, that's
and-
Greg Proops. He's smart.
Exactly. One of the things that is very different, however, from those different eras is that I'm getting better at this, Bobby. This one's not going to be that great. But one of the things that's new to this era actually is the rise of rights for trans men and women. And one of the things that's not being talked about because, of course, God, we have murder hornets and a pandemic and global warming and George Floyd and Elijah McClain. And also now we have Black women who are, Black trans women who are being murdered. Rhea Milton was 25 and Dominique Remy Fells was 27. And they were all murdered in separate incidents in the past week. And it brings to a total of, I believe, 14 women this year. And last year, I believe, hope I'm getting these numbers right, but yeah, last year it was like a crazy number of Black trans women who have been murdered, and the police don't really care.
They never have.
Well, they've done such a great job with the indigenous women.
Yeah.
I don't mean to laugh. That's terrible to laugh, but it's true.
But it's true. I mean, like it's the sad part is that it's just another add-on. It's another atrocious pocket of society that is going underrepresented, underviewed, and
they care about the deaths
underinvestigated.
of any Black people? Do they care about the deaths of any indigenous people? No. It just seems like, you know, it's. I guess it's like there's this view that some people are expendable and some people have value, and so often that proposition is drawn along racial lines. Well,
they also cross racial lines. The homophobia in the Black community is pretty extreme in most communities around the world. I know when I was coming up in Black circles, if you were trans, man, you were that dude. Mm-hmm. It's like a friend actually told me years ago, and I have no idea if this is true or not, but he was saying about a decade or so ago, organizers in Jamaica were planning a gay Pride Day march in Kingston. And according to him, there was a run on bullets the week before. You couldn't find a bullet in the town. So, you know, they obviously canceled. Don't know if that's true or not, but I know coming up, man, fuck.
As someone of Jamaican heritage, I think I'm the person who can say Jamaica is a horrible place for homophobia. Yeah. There's the only place more homophobic in the world than Jamaica is the only place more homophobic than in the world than Jamaica is Afghanistan, and that's kind of it.
I was going to guess Bobby's bedroom.
Hey ho!
Hey. No, I remember when I was a teenager. I was 15, and I did a sort of traveling show for kids. Went to camps, and you know, I was one of the leads in this play. And a friend of mine who was a Jamaican guy was in this play. And somehow the topic of what they do to gay people in Jamaica came up. And I'll never forget what he said. And he was like, "Oh, we throw them in the bog," is what he said. And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh, you throw them in the bog. It's like they just kill them and throw them in the river." And he didn't say it even in the mean way. It was like matter of fact. And I was like,
yeah. And I think when you're bringing up trans Black folk on any side, there's so many ways you can explain why there is that behavior in Black culture in the same way you can explain it in any culture. But there has to come a point where it's like, however you may rationalize why this is happening, right? Well, it's happening because of this reason, centuries of oppression. And yeah, I get that. As long as after you make that point, you say, we got to stop this shit. Right? I get where it comes from. Stop doing this shit. Because I really want to know how many folks of color, trans folks of color were killed by folks of color. And that's not going to be a popular one, but fuck the world.
Right.
Louis, what are you doing? You're trying to get canceled by black people? What are you doing?
That's my job. I'm
Come on,
putting on my
give Todd
Tucker
his-
Carlson face.
Yeah, no, but it's been going on. You guys have seen the film, the documentary on Paris is Burning.
Yeah,
Mm.
I saw it a while ago, but yeah.
Yeah. I think it was the early '90s it came out, and even like in that film, they were going on about friends of theirs who were trans or in drag who had been killed, right, or murdered. So
I have a friend of mine who I reconnected with just shortly before the pandemic, and he's originally from Trinidad, and I said I hadn't seen him in quite a few years, and so we're just like having a beer after work, and it's like, hey, what's up? And he says, well, I have 2 daughters, and I went, didn't you have a boy and a girl? And he went, yup. And I went, and he looked shaken as he was telling me, right? And I get that that's ingrained in his culture, and now he's a torn man. And the first thing I said was congratulations, because as I know the world is shit right now, and it's going to be shit for a while, but every day that we go forward is a better day to be LGBTQ. Yeah. It's a better day to be trans, because there's more acceptance of that. Yes, there's pockets of
way
idiots,
more,
and there's but it's so much better now than it ever has been, and it's going to continue to get better, because as much as you have idiots in power that may try and stop the progress, people will not change in this, and the younger people are going to come forward and do this. And for him, I said, like, dude, this is so great, because not only is there going to be support there, but you've also, if because of this realization so early on, there's less risk of them being so fucked up about this that they don't know what to do and take their own lives. So at least that is a possibility that is at least tempered slightly, and the probability is dropped. I'm not saying it isn't gone, and I'm not saying there isn't a lot of work to do, but my God, that's so great, and he loves his kid. And it's wonderful to see. And so, the more support that you can give people in these communities, that this is fucking new to me. This isn't supposed to happen. We used to just throw them in the bog. What now? And the more that we can counter that, the better. Obviously.
Can I, and this goes back, like, this notion of a line, right? Like, where do you draw the line? I would not be aware of my own ingrained homophobia without being challenged to my face with a great deal of heat and anger. I am at the point now where I can see someone gay or trans, try to ignore the ingrained hit that I had, right? And then move on. Now I'm at a point where I can go, oh, whoa, look at this, look at what you're feeling, right? And this became really clear to me when I was working with an at-risk youth, right? They paired me with him because, he was gay, he was trying to work through his shit. And we became relatively close. We could talk. And then the next time I saw him, he had breasts, right? And my reaction was, whoa, okay, I'm going to deal with this. This was earlier, like 15 years ago or something, 15, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And then he came and he grabbed me and he hugged me. And part of what he was doing was exploring the difference for him, the newness for him, right? and in his grasp of me. And I just fucking froze. I was like, I don't know how to handle this.
Mhm.
I have no idea how to.
Oh,
So I didn't push him away or anything, but he could feel my tension, right? And through that being confronted, I at least know what I have to work on.
It's funny you say that because it does have to do with generations, because you and I, Lois, are from the same generation. So we're dealing with stuff. Whereas my daughter's generation, just to give you a quick sort of like snapshot of what my daughter's generation is dealing with. So my daughter's best friend is lesbian, and they've got a gender fluid friend as well. And my daughter's lesbian friend had a girlfriend from another school who was the head of the cheerleading team. And so the lesbian friend of my daughter broke up with her, but then wasn't still invited to the birthday. So my daughter's lesbian friend and her gender fluid friend went to this party of the head of the cheerleading squad of another school, where the head of the football team was there, and the head of, and the other cheerleaders were there, and none of them made any homophobic slurs. Like in the 80s,
Oh yeah.
War
what
zone.
even happened? First off, there's no way these girls are even telling anybody they're lesbian in the 80s. Are you kidding? And
Well, I mean,
second,
my kid's gay, and and I'm listening to the conversations amongst their friends,
Mhm.
right? Where they're trying to figure out where non-binary and anti-male and anti-male sentiments, right, coexist. How can you be non-binary?
Yeah.
Right? And that's really having serious and intelligent conversations on, how do I adjust my feelings around straight men if I'm projecting a non-binary identity?
now, I would say, I would like to adjust everybody's attitudes towards white men with my section.
Here we go.
Andrew loves white people.
Segway monster.
There we go. This week in my segment, I saw this on the internet, I saw this on YouTube, and it's just a little moment. It's like not even like really a story, but it's just this moment I really identified with, where this white guy's on the subway. I think it's New York, I'm not sure. And he's on the subway and he's playing a game on his phone, and he's playing and stuff. And then he notices a little black kid sitting next to him, just staring over, just looking at the game. And the white guy's playing, and he can see the black kid sort of looking. And then there's this wonderful little moment. It gets me every time, where the white guy just looks at the kid, says, hey, doesn't even say anything, just hands the phone right over to the black kid, and the black kid starts playing. And there's this moment of the two of them just join in the joy of playing a video. They don't even know each other. They're just like, literally, it's a moment on the subway where they're just enjoying a moment, playing a game together. And I love that. Being,
I gotta bust you. That was I Love Humanity. That was an I Love Humanity moment. So you failed.
with a white guy. There was a white guy in that moment.
And there was a black guy. So it's humanity.
Right.
There you
Right.
go. Now, of course, you can't have treacle without the brimstone. Todd,
What?
hand over for our weekly segment.
We should reverse this.
Todd's segment.
I feel so good right now, and I know.
Don't you?
What is good about treacle?
We don't want to leave you feeling good, Bobby.
No.
We don't want to leave you
And
feeling good.
trust me, if anyone should deliver the shitty feelings, it's the white man.
Exactly. Todd, bring us your I Hate White People segment. That's
Well, firstly, I would also say I should be on this list because there is so much difficulty in Andrew filling his segment and so easy for me to fill mine.
it was hard this week. It was hard. It's true.
I bet. You had to go back to pre-COVID times, I'm sure. Neither of them were wearing masks and gloves, I'm
No.
sure.
No, they weren't.
98?
It's an old YouTube video. It's old.
Yeah, okay. I would like to step forward this week. Letitia Montana, I believe is her name. By the way, that sounds very much like a porn star from Eastern Europe somewhere.
Yeah,
Okay,
little bit.
can we just say I
Little
have moved to US, now I am porn. She posted out a video thinking that she was going to be doing a great service to everyone of her treatment in a Toronto hospital. It says labeled everywhere, we will not offer you any services unless you come in wearing a mask. So she decided to fire up the old phone and record her being told by the nursing staff that no, this is a hospital. You are putting everyone at risk not wearing a goddamn mask. So wear a goddamn mask. And she said no and went, oh, that's that. And the response has been shaky. Shall we say, to the point where George Takei called her, and I quote, a new level of moronic. George Takei, Sulu from Star Trek is calling your bullshit. So that's pretty fun. She has since created a rally where upwards of tens of people showed up on the first day that Toronto said you have to wear masks in public spaces, and they did this outside one of the subway stations. And so she's really digging her high heels in. So thank you, Letitia, for allowing me to fucking hate white people. So
I have to admit, even though I'm smiling and laughing, I find it so frustrating when people actually of all colors and genders and races and creeds,
but mostly white,
step outside their doors and not wearing masks, because they have no idea what danger they're putting other people in. People think that the mask is to protect you. No, it's actually to protect other people.
Yeah.
It's to stop because you could have the disease and not even know it. We don't know why. We have no idea.
Irritates me.
Well, I was just going to say, it's an interesting topic to me because now we're also talking about law and our social contract. And, because now there's going to be a thing in Toronto, and I think it's this week, it may even be today, I'm not sure, where anytime you're inside any sort of public space, you're mandated to wear a mask. You got to wear a mask, which I get. Cool. So when you're not inside, so that would be a store or a restaurant or wherever, you don't have to. So, it's funny because there is variance and degrees of opinion here, because I just think if you want people to wear masks all the time, then that's what you need to say. If it's about when you're inside places, which is what it is now, and you have to wear a mask, cool. But I think that at a certain level, there's a lot of confusion during COVID because no one's quite sure what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to act. And for me, when you set a law, I will follow the law, no problem. But let me know what I'm supposed to do. And I don't.
Let me tell you something, Bobby. One thing you don't have to wear a mask for is watching our episode. That is it for upload. The next time you watch us, you can be mask free, Bobby. Mask free. Thank you very much for watching. Okay, make sure you hit that like button. Okay. And please, as a matter of fact, now we're going to be doing this. We've got a lot of episodes, and we're going to be continuing to do this. Make sure you subscribe so that you can find out, when the next episode is. And we will check you guys out later. Thanks a lot, everybody. Goodbye.